Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Liz.
Super. I'm just going to use the mute on my phone.
Council will call the meeting order. For the record, is December 19th, 2023 at 4:34 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Strader,
Here,
Councilman Overton.
Here.
Councilwoman Perot. Here. Councilman Morton,
Here.
Councilman Hoagland,
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here. Next item up is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that we adopt the agenda as published. Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that the council approve the consent agenda and for the mayor to sign and clerk to attest. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there a discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There are no items moved from the consent agenda, so we will,
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Councilman
Real
Borton.
quick, just on item 10 on the consent agenda. I know Keith watched, oh, he's here. Thanks for doing that, for sending that out little note. I think when it's some larger items, just a little heads up, here's what happened. You always follow process and policy, but it's a good heads up for us on the bigger ones. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you, Councilman Borton. There were no items moved to the consent agenda, so we will go on to our department commission reports. First item up is item 12, which is a fiscal year 2024 budget amendment in the amount of $1,100,000 for acquisition and implementation of human resource management system software. I will turn this over to our CFO, Mr. Lavoy.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, again, appreciate the opportunity to present this item to you. As Robert just stated, we are presenting a budget request for $1.1 million. It's one-time dollars that we are looking for to move forward with the acquisition and implementation of a human resources payroll and time card solution. About 7 days ago, we presented to you a handful of documents that provided supporting information for this request. We had the memo, we had this budget document that is presented to you tonight. So we had a 10-year cost analysis as well in that document or in that package. We also included questions and answers. Each individual council member had a conversation with myself, Christina Barney, David Teedy, or Debbie Hoops in regards to this particular topic. Those questions and answers were a consolidation of the questions that you presented to the four of us, and then the answers were provided in that consolidated document. Again, we provided that information for you, and the last item on there or in that package was a PowerPoint presentation that we presented to you in previous meetings to explain what we were requesting for. So again, the summary of this request, what are we requesting? Again, we're looking for a modern solution for the city for the next 20 years to provide payroll, time card, and human resource management. In the current systems that we have right now range from, I think, 24 to 19 years. So again, we've been utilizing solutions for 19 plus years. We're looking for the next 20 years. Again, the solution that we're looking for, we want it to be reliable and accurate. Just like you or all the employees, they want to make sure they have a paycheck that's reliable and accurate on a monthly basis. We're looking for flexible and timely solutions. Again, as the city grows from the 300 employees that we had back in 1999 to 620 that we have now, we have fire, we have police, we now have a golf course, we have potential community center. Again, our dynamics are changing and growing. We need to have a solution that can evolve with that. We need a solution that can be supportive and manageable. And human resources needs to be able to manage all the different pieces of data moving through the system for the larger number of employees. And then we want to be able to convey an effective and confident solution to our employees and to our citizens. So again, in summary, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a modern solution for the next 20 years for our departments and our employees. And we stand for any questions. I have all the subject matter experts here. Again, we are looking for an approval for a budget request of one-time dollars of 1.1 million. That will acquire the solution, and the funds will be split between the enterprise fund and the general fund balances. And we stand for any questions.
Thank you, Todd. I assume you're not pointing to the firefighters with that looking behind you on this topic.
Again, if they wish to be subject matter experts, yeah. We have other ones in the office. Or in
IT,
attendance.
Human Resources.
Mm.
Yes. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I'd love to have HR come forward and just provide your comments, thoughts on this solution. It's really your wheelhouse. We don't get to see HR.
Is there anything we can answer specifically? I think Todd spoke to the dynamics of our city has changed over the last 19 years or so that we've been using our current solutions.
So I'll answer your question with a question, I think. The reason I asked you to come up is, we're not in the day-to-day. We're broader picture policy decision makers. And so it's tempting at times if we're able to say, well, why don't we just kick the can down the road another 5 years? We don't know what you're dealing with on a daily basis and the massive growth that we've dealt with. So from either of your perspectives, what's the snapshot from HR that says kicking the can down the road is a fatal mistake?
I'm going to defer to Christina, just because she's been involved in this for the last 3 years. I'm coming on newer at 6 months. I'm going to let her answer, and then I'll add.
Okay. Great.
So essentially, we kind of have been kicking the can down the road as we have been doing this RFP process for about the last 5 years. So some of our systems have not had support for the last 5 years. And so we knew that we were going to have to provide a different system going forward. We started this process about 3 years ago, looking at different vendors, what could support us into the future. Found a solution that we liked, and this is all in the memo, but just on the record, found a solution we liked, put that money in the budget. They didn't have like a sole source that we needed in order to contract with them. So we did our full RFP process. Through that, we found that Workday responded and meets a large portion of our requirements and will help us go into the future. That being said, almost all of our processes are manual. And we approximate this saving about 400 manual entry hours on payroll and HR side of the house. It also allows us to be more flexible in the place, offer different types of benefits, offer different pay codes, and those types of things that we're just simply limited right now. I've made reference before at this meeting and other meetings, we have what's called the black box. So we have this interface that works between HR and our payroll. And we can't make any changes to it because if we do, it breaks, we're signing paper paychecks. And so really that is the risk. If we don't move forward with this right now is the potential that breaks and we go to a fully manual process for payroll.
That, I think, in a nutshell, is what it comes down to. We kick the can down the road. It may last another 3 years. It may break tomorrow. And the sooner we can implement something to navigate that, the better. We don't want to go back to manual checks.
Just so that you're aware, this implementation process is not an easy or a fast process either. So if, for instance, a system broke tomorrow, we are 12 months out from being able to implement another system because of all the business processes that it touches.
Councilman Borton.
Brought up one other question. Does this cost include all of the onboarding and training necessary to not only get it installed and to us, but to train all of us and all of you to how to use it?
It does include training all the subject matter experts, the implementation team, and then internally we will be working on training all of the employees on how to utilize the self-service.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
No, I won't throw this one at Debbie or Christina, but if Todd from IT, Dave Teedy from IT, come up. I just want to ask about the transition process, taking a legacy system and bringing something new. Is this a full merge? Is it a complete wipe the slate clean and drop something in? Give me some comfort, having gone through some things that are not fun, how this process will move forward.
Fair enough, Councilman Hoagland. So we do plan to migrate data from our current systems to the new system, but what we migrate and how much of that data will depend on what area of the program we're talking about. So for HR data, we'll probably be talking about active employees and information, and then legacy data will be backed up by reporting. So we'll be able to access that data from reporting. On the payroll side, we'll have to bring in more data so that we can do payroll processing with systems and make sure that things are matching up and aligning moving forward so that we have accurate paychecks and whatnot. So that will have a little bit more information, but we will still be able to pull from legacy systems from reporting sources.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up,
Councilman Hoagland.
Dave, then, so you're fairly confident this is a decent process that we can kick off and have completed, and it sounds like it is a lengthy one. What is your estimate of time frame? I think I heard possibly a year, but
We estimate 12 to 18 months at this point. And yes, we do feel very confident in the data migration component of the overall.
okay. And Mr. Mayor, I just want to wish him well on that project.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
Mayor.
Pro.
I have a question for Mr. Lavoy. If he would join us again. In the presentation that you provided on the dollars and cents page, I want to see if I'm understanding that the funding reallocations are monies that are currently being used for these 5 or 6 categories, but they will then, yes, they will then be reallocated to cover the annual ongoing costs? Is that what I'm understanding?
So Councilwoman Perot, you're referring to, I think, the second to the last page of the PowerPoint presentation that we provided to you. This document goes over the 1.1 million for one time and then the ongoing costs. The ongoing cost, the mayor worked with a few directors to figure out what budgets we had in place to make sure that we experience zero requests, new additional dollar requests to the council or the citizens to cover these charges. And this table here displays the information that we were able to collect between the mayor and the directors. These other solutions that we found, we could omit these in the future so that we can take those existing budget dollars, add it to the approved budget that was approved in the original request, so that the total ongoing costs are covered with a net zero cost or increase to the budget for the fiscal 24. And in 25, we'll probably have a little inflation, just like any other software cost does. But this for 24, mayor and a few directors found the dollars to make this a net zero increase for the bottom line of the budget.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate everyone's work on it. I do think Workday is the gold standard and it's a very comprehensive solution. So I know you're using it for, payroll and time card and so forth. I just want to make sure and confirm with everyone that all the departments are planning to make full use of the system, including the performance management aspects of the system. And just to call out, if there's any part of the system you're not using, what those are and why.
Councilwoman Strader. So we are planning on using what they call HCM, which is their human capital management side of the product. They also have a financial suite, and that is not in scope for what we're doing, as the city is not looking for a financial solution at this time. As far as the umbrella of what's covered under their HCM product, I believe we're intending on using every component that we intend to license, with the exception of scheduling, which is a fairly new addition for them. We are not planning on using scheduling at this time. However, that's not to say that time cards, absences, things like that won't be managed in the system. They will. Scheduling is a different solution for needs like what police and fire currently have scheduling solutions for.
Thanks. That's really helpful. And so just to confirm that performance management specifically would run through Workday.
Mayor, Councilwoman, this is Debbie. And yes, performance management is something that, we currently run. There's a lot of manual information that we have to process. And so this is something that whatever is available to us through Workday is something that we would use for the good of the employees in the city.
Great. No, that's
Just to add
super.
on.
I just appreciate hearing that. Thanks.
Council, any additional questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, Councilman
Sure.
Hoagland.
doesn't appear to be any additional questions. I would move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment in the amount of $1,100,000 for the acquisition and implementation of human resource management system software.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
an added element, I think Todd hinted at it, the memo certainly covers it, but it's a lot of money. Everything's a lot of money these days in a city this size. But the fact that it does offset what would otherwise be some recurring labor costs and manual data entry, payroll processing, some of the expenses that would be incurred one way or the other. Certainly the one-time expense that you described seems to be a more appropriate solution to something that has to be solved. I just thought that was an added element. Support.
Council, any additional comments? If not, clerk call the roll.
Strader,
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Borton.
Aye.
Hoagland.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and the item is agreed to. Good luck, team. Look forward to what happens next.
The real work starts now. So
Work starts now. Don't break the system in the next year to 18
Yeah.
months.
thank you very much.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll move on to item 13, which is the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment in the amount of $1,736,714 from Meridian Fire Department Safer Grant. Turn this over to Chief Bloom.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. About 109 days ago, in fact, exactly 109 days ago, the city of Tucson, the city of Meridian was noticed, sorry, Freudian slip.
You didn't
Wasn't-
say it all. It's okay.
I didn't, yeah. I was thinking it, but no, I'm sorry. I'm going there next week, if that makes any difference. Anyway, we were noticed being a recipient of the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Resources Grant for 24 firefighters. The dialogue that then took place between staff, members of council, and city legal was that a different number actually represented the actual need for the city of Meridian, and that number was 18. And so after a lengthy process going through an attempt to get it amended through FEMA, they accepted our amended request of 18 because it complied with the intent of the grant, the way that it was intended to be applied and utilized by the city of Meridian. So this evening, you see before you a request to fund the 18 positions that are recognized by the SAFER grant this year. The amount also looks at, recognizes, and accounts for the additional funding that is not covered by the grant. So any hours of overtime, uniforms, emergency equipment that these people will use, that is also represented in this budget amendment request. So with that, that's what the Meridian Fire Department is requesting this evening, is your consideration of approving the funding so that we may move forward with our SAFER grant award.
Thank you, Chief. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pro.
Thank you, Chief. Were you able to get any more clarification on the timing of when we could start requesting reimbursement?
Councilwoman Pro, as far as reimbursement goes, it occurs on once we've, which we have done, we've made notice of acceptance of the award to FEMA. After 180 days have transpired, that's when our clock starts. And then we are allowed to do quarterly, or we will be doing, if moving forward this evening, we will be doing quarterly reporting, and that quarterly reporting includes expenses, how much money the city of Meridian has expended. And of that, a significant portion of that is reimbursed by the grant. So it's a reimbursement quarterly.
Mr. Mayor, a follow-up.
Councilman Pro.
So would that reporting be done at the end of the quarter? So we're looking at 180 days and then another 90 before that could be requested, or approximately?
Councilwoman Pro, that is my understanding. But again, before I speak on behalf of finance practices, I would ask Todd if that's consistent.
Councilwoman Perot, the timelines we have not identified to the final date yet, but we will report 30 days, probably 30 days after our quarter ends. So I don't know which quarters they refer to yet. Is it January quarters or is it fiscal quarters? But we will do it as fast as we can, usually 30 days within the quarter close. So we won't wait another 90 days after. We just have to figure out, is it quarter close or annual fiscal year, fiscal year quarters or calendar year quarters. We're working with them, but we will do within 30 days of the quarter close. Yeah.
Council, additional questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pro.
if there are no additional questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
of course, there are, sorry. I have a few if I can just.
Yes.
So, no surprise that I've got questions. So here's my overarching concern is from a long-term perspective, and I worry greatly, and quite frankly, worry for the folks that are in our fire department right now. So there's policy considerations that we can argue about and have differences of opinion, and there's facts. And so what I've tried to do is see if I understand the facts correctly to help inform the decision. I've shared some of these, I put them in an email to everybody, right? A couple months ago, and so there's no surprises to some of the questions. So this very well may have the support tonight, but I think it's important to, one, make sure if anyone in this room disagrees with the facts as I understand them. So one of them is, and it's a comment in the budget amendment form, actually states, it states this sentence: the city will need to acquire new revenues to pay for the employees after the SAFER grant expires, right? No surprise there. And it's about, I'll use a round number, $3 million. Is that a safe round number? It's not high. Is that correct? Finance correct? Chief, anything that you think this is different?
No, sorry. Again, I would defer to finance on
Okay.
what an approximate value in year 4 is. I'm not too sure I have that number for you.
So all of these facts kind of inform the decision. That's why I'm going to go through these steps. I think it's important, whether I'm for or against it, for everyone in our department to understand at least how I think through these things. Fact number 2 was we've established and adopted a written policy that requires or encourages us up here to avoid utilizing one-time proceeds to pay for recurring costs. Seems pretty elementary, but we, with very rare exception, I can't think of any, but there probably is one small one. We never do that. And it makes sense because it's a short-term funding source for a long-term perpetual cost. We all balance our own checkbooks at home, and we do it right. None of us do that, right? Get a bonus, you don't go buy a car, finance it. You can, but is it prudent? So that's a fact, I think, right? The policy exists, correct? It's where I've seen it. I don't know what it's called, so for what it's worth. And the third one that I wrestled with is The budget amendment talks about you have to find new recurring revenue of $3 million in year 4. And so, and what I had put in that communication a couple months ago, as I understood it, here's, a dozen revenue sources potentially if everything's on the table. And here's why certain ones don't work, or they're not recurring, or they're not available, or we don't control them. And none of that, as I understood it, totaled $3 million. So was that correct? Did you have information, Chief, that showed otherwise?
Councilman Borton, I don't have any other information.
Not to put you on the hot seat,
otherwise.
but you're
No,
on the hot seat. You're at the
yeah.
podium. So all of that leaves me with the concern that if you have recurring revenue or recurring expenses in year 3 or year 4, and you don't have recurring revenue to pay for it, it shines a light on the incomplete and the more complete question. The incomplete question is, can the city afford it? Absolutely, it can. City could afford 5 or 6. I think the city could probably afford 30 or 40 firefighters. I think the complete question for me is, can the city afford it in relation to the trade-offs that have to be made? That's what makes me nervous. That's what's puzzled me for a couple of months, right? So is there revenue? Sure. What I put in that email that gives me pause is, if we know there's not recurring revenue to cover it, what are the available cost-cutting measures that would close the gap? Because you have to close the gap. And one I worry about, I'm not comfortable if the cost coverage comes at the expense of what should be market-based wage increases for a police step plan or for any of our general employees. And I don't think that's the intent of the ask by any stretch. We're all on the same team. So that's not an available revenue source, or it's a very difficult one. Another revenue source would come in the next collective bargaining, where, our fire union says we're going to freeze or cap our wage increase to create what would otherwise be revenue savings to pay for this. That's a big lift and a big ask. When I say I worry about our department, I worry about that. I don't know if everyone's willing to make that suggestion that says, if there's a gap, here's how we'd close it. And it comes on our back. That's a big ask. So you don't have, wages less than they otherwise would be. Now what? None of us have to solve that problem today or next year or back in 2 years. Some or all of us may, we may not be here. Some of you guys might not be here. The problem, and maybe this is just me, my worry is, I've always worried up here about 20 years, right? And then 10 years down the road. I'm not here. It doesn't matter. I'm worried about making a decision that hampers next chief, the next mayor, the next council members in 2030 or 35. So I put forth all those facts of the gap and the delta, and I never got any information from anybody that said, here's the known, certain, recurring, available revenue source to fund it. I think I understand, because it doesn't exist, and we still can afford it, right? Go forward with this, you can pay for it. But there is one hell of a tough decision in 2028 on how we're going to bridge that gap. And that's what makes me nervous. So in light of all of that, at least hopefully everyone here who's in the audience, I appreciate you being here. If that informs you of my concern, if anybody in this audience has any comments or questions or corrections to anything I said, come on up, tell me I'm misunderstanding something. Again, it very well may come forward, but I want you to know my worry is about you and about the success of the department in light of what I think might be a big problem in a few years. So And again, it doesn't probably come as any surprise, but I'd love to hear from anybody who knows something that I'm missing, because I will certainly keep an open mind. Again, and if you're telling me, here's the other thing, and I've done some digging on the value. I don't diminish the value of the four-person company and what it provides and the different service quality that it does by any stretch. And you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't have applied for the grant if it wasn't important to you. But is it more important than what could otherwise be, more enhanced wages for the union or for administration, which will follow? I worry about the need additional firefighters to cover float that aren't directly addressed in here. Worry about the added cost of, there's going to be more administration personnel as well. All of that just sort of compounds, and that's what's concerning. Oh, I worried about by allocating all of this labor cost revenue to this solution, that it appears to eliminate the ability to put two companies in a station. You've got all of our resources going to four-man staffing. Maybe perfectly justified, but the alternative option of a response time solution where you might have done that in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, it seems as though we're waiving that path and choosing this one. I presume that's your recommendation, that this is the more important path, the better solution. So again, it goes back to what I think is the more complete question. Can we afford it in light of the trade-offs necessary to do it? And all of those trade-offs, I worry, for our department, to make sure that we're not just lighting a fuse that blows up. You feel free to give me your thoughts or comments on it. If you think anything's mistaken factually, please correct me.
Councilman Borton, I appreciate your concern. You have very measured and thought out concerns. There's certainly my concerns as well, but I can tell you, I haven't been sitting in my office twiddling my thumbs, and 3 years is a long runway for us to figure it out. And I'm committed to the organization and the community to find that solution to bring whatever level of enhanced service that the Meridian Fire Department needs. I'm committed to that. And to the point that you made about multi-company stations, the SAFER grant requires us in our grant guidance to pursue a 4-person staffing model for the duration for the performance period of the grant. That doesn't prevent us from staffing and standing up a engine company or a second unit of service to allow us to evaluate during those periods. What is the return on that investment? Are we getting, is it better that we get 4 people on scene able to go to work? I can guarantee you, from somebody having a heart attack, a stroke, or a house fire, the answer is unequivocally yes. But is it the best deployment model? I don't know that. What I know is that we need to look at multiple things over the course of the next 3 years, over the course and the period of the grant. And we're intently focused on doing just that.
But Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
the challenge is you got to keep 4-person staffing, right? Which is fine. I mean, I don't have an issue with it, but those are the purposeful strings of the grant, which, and I remember that language, and I'm okay with it. I guess what I'm hearing, what gives me more comfort, if you said, Councilman Borton, I understand those trade-offs, I will stand at the front of that. If it means that we don't do that because the grant requires 4-person staffing, we're going to do it. If any of the other sacrifices that I've mentioned on the record tonight, if you're saying any of those are off the table, say it now. Because I think the difficult situation is all of those cost savings measures might be on the table. That's why I don't like that. I don't like the idea of saying anyone's, what should be a market wage has to be a little less because we overspent. Whether it's fire or IT or parks, anybody. That's when I'd say I worry I worry even for, our next union contract, if things are less than they otherwise might be, in order to ensure that we've got the revenue to pay for it. That's the unintended consequences that something so big that we've never done. That's what keeps me up at night, and I might not even be here. Still freaks me out. So.
I'll just give you my 2 cents, and I've communicated this to the department and others, is we're only going to enter facts into evidence that are true, right? We're not going to talk about emotion. We're not going to talk about what we think. We're not going to, the truth is we don't need to keep any of these 18 positions after the 3 years of the grant. So there is no guaranteed cost for ongoing measures. We can debate about whether or not we think that's going to happen. We're only entering what is a factual information about the grant. Actually, at the end of the grant, we don't need to having these, no one needs to be retained. There is no ongoing cost commitment to the city for that purpose. All the other things can still be considered. I have communicated to the department as well as others, at least my intentions as mayor, about how we try to go about balancing the ongoing revenues to build up how many people are actually retained at that point in time, just to alleviate those concerns that you raised about pitting only one solution versus the other. So I think if you're asking the question, well, what gives if we keep all 18? There are gives, 100%. Well, what if we only keep 9? Then what are those gives at that point in time? That is the 3-year conversation about what is the revenue that will be generated. But I'm just trying to say facts and evidence. Facts and evidence, to go to the point, is none of the positions need to be retained, which, at least in my company, I just want to keep it not emotional, not what the likelihood is, how much they're going to come up here and talk and try to convince you, and how hard it's going to be. There is a path forward to a solution. I don't know what the number is going to be in 4 years of that budget, about how many of the 18 will be still as part of the department's overall needs. We'll figure that out together, and I'm committed to doing that for the next 4 years, even looking at other arenas. There are a lot of unknowns, a ton of unknowns. I get it. So, my 2 cents.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Morton.
I was going to close the loop on that one. So I thought someone would come up and provide comment in the crowd. You're all here. Love to hear from anybody. But to that point, this is maybe my personal, I would have, if you said, like you are right now, we need these people and it makes it right for Meridian, better for everybody, I don't think I could ever I could never get rid of somebody. It might not be a technical contract. It feels like a moral contract for me. We bring folks in that you say are critical for our city, they're in. It's not changing. So that's probably why I don't even perceive that as a viable solution. It might be a technical solution, but man, get in the family based on what you're sharing is the reason why.
Just doing facts, not what I prefer, just the facts. Councilwoman Schrader.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I view it as a historic opportunity, and I do think there is a challenge, and there's no doubt that it's a stretch. I view it a little differently. I view having a runway of, a few years to build up the sources of ongoing revenue as a very important component of this. And so, I think through a combination of property tax increases, even if needed, use of foregone, and then I get comfort from, and no offense, Todd, but finance has consistently overshot the mark on our revenue projections. And I think that they're appropriately conservative, but I view that as a good indication that we'll find a way to find those sources of revenue. And then the chief has found, I think, some creative, although, as Joe points out, uncertain potential sources of ongoing revenue to help offset. And then I sort of view it more as, we have a ton of people approaching retirement as well, and there will be future attrition, I think, in the coming years. And so this, to me, just gives us an amazing bandwidth to staff 4-person companies, to give the chief the flexibility to play around with staffing and figure it out. And so I echo Joe's comment, though. I'd love to hear from people, hear that it's important to them. I think that just helps to validate it. But I don't view with the same heartburn the financial setup here. I think we have the ability. There are times when you stretch. To me, this is a historic opportunity and we should take it, and we'll find a way. And I think through that combination, it is possible to pay for it. So I didn't come to the same conclusion.
Councilman Overton.
I'm a huge fan of grant opportunities when they bring extra personnel to fire. Most of my experience, of course, was with the smaller cops grants over the years that we got in the police department. And even those, I remember councils past having to deal with the real concern of whether, when we entered into those, they were 5 officers at a time. We were going to have that funding down the road to cover those costs. They were small. One of the first things I pressed about on this one, and it wasn't just because you're fireman. It had to do with the size of a one-time grant. It's huge. And that brings a lot of this concern is such an enormous grant at one time, and split up over time, which would have been nice. But I'm committed to it. I know it creates concern, but I think it's the right thing to do. I do believe that there's always times with past councils, present councils, and future councils where we've got to make decisions that hope for that solution's going to be there in 3 years. We don't know what that solution's going to look like right now. We talked about worst case scenarios, and I hope that's not the case. I think in 3 years, we'll have a scenario the city can move forward on and not sacrifice pay increases to the police department, pay increases to all the city staff, and try to move forward with every part of our city. At the same time, we increase your staff. So I'm supportive of this, but that's not without the same concerns that have.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pearl.
I just want to ask Councilman Borton a question. And I'm hearing everything, all those concerns and all those concerns. I have asked our team. As you know, we had a team of about 6 or 7 of us that met 5 to 6 times to discuss all these pros and cons. Can we do this? Is this worth doing? What happens if we don't do this? What does that look like? And so I'm curious, the grant was accepted by the mayor's office, I think on October 31st. I'm wondering if you had had a chance to chat with any members of the team to talk about some of the solutions that we discussed or some of their thoughts, and if that had alleviated any of your questions, or if none of the questions, if you feel like none of those questions have really been answered, do you propose, or are you proposing that we delay a decision on the budget amendment so that you can get those answers? Just curious if there is there an answer that can be found, or are the questions being asked as a matter of just more of a putting them out there so that we all are really chewing on them and think about, can we afford to do this? Can we not afford to do this?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Borton.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So there's nothing that's unanswered. I just, everyone, it seems, acknowledges that there is that delta between revenue and expense that will exist. It's a real thing. It's 7 figures, and we're going to figure it out in 3, 4, 5 years. And there's a variety of tools in the toolbox to do it. I don't like any of them, but there's tools. I mean, it's going to be a funky discussion in 4 years, 3 or 4 years. We always find a way. I agree. I think that's glass half full. There's always a way. And just don't like, I don't want, the reason I brought it up is to be very transparent in my concerns, see if I'm misunderstanding any underlying facts, and to see if there's anyone who is unwilling to accept those known risks of the solutions all hurt. They all hurt potentially, and love to be wrong, and maybe something changes down the road. That's, but as far as in data and underlying information, I think I've got it. Just concerned. I would, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay.
Councilman Ward.
Derek, if you want to come forward, you're here, doggone it. I want you to just, it's okay. But Jordan, Tyler, I mean, it's great. Councilwoman Strader brings up a good point. That'd be great. It's a big deal. We've not done something like this, of this magnitude. So hearing your thoughts on it's important to us.
Well, I mean, am I close enough? Closer still? Okay. I mean, it's huge. I don't disagree, and I see what you know, folks as council, as keepers of, you know, the public trust, what the position this puts you in to make these grand decisions like this. I respect that 100%. You know, I, as just representing, you know, the 100 and some odd just line personnel out there, but so I understand where you're at. This is a big long-term consideration, things we don't know. I get it. But the world that I live in, that I've lived in for the last 16 years for this city, for this community, is one of, we don't know. I don't know what that next call is going to be. I don't know what the next, you know, worst day of somebody's life is going to be, and how am I best to serve them? I do know this, there are better ways to serve them. And this is one of those better ways to serve this community, is through this safer grant action that allows us to get up to a 4-person staffing model. Will this be where we end in 3 years? I don't know. Is this the best model? Right now, this is the best model per NFPA. This is the best model that we know to get the right number of people to an emergency to affect, you know, somebody's worst day. So from that perspective, I've been part of the same working group. We struggled. I know Todd's done some great work, you know, putting some numbers together, helping us to try and digest them. Some of them are really tough to swallow, for sure. I don't, you know, I know this is what a position this puts you in, but I do think this is for the benefit of those folks out there. And I do think, to your point, like, I could come up here and we could make this emotional, you know, because it is, for me, that's all it is. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm more on the emotional side. And I think this is a really important thing to do. And I think it's the right decision to do. And I know that the people, you know, that I'm representing are very much in support of, because they are out there every day and seeing how important it is. Like, to our police friends as well, you know, I don't want this to come at the expense of anything else either in this city. I want this to come at the benefit to this city and rise all boats. But, you know, I work for the fire department, so I'm here representing them. But I do think it's important. And thank you for asking me up here. I mean, being part of the working group, thank you to the mayor and the team for being part of that. We, you know, as a local, also appreciate that, because being inside that door and having those conversations is important. And I look forward to sharing our point of view. So thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, just a couple thoughts and maybe some questions in here, but, you know, Chief, when you first went after this, it wasn't just a nice thing to do. And being part of the discussions and whatnot, this was something that we needed to do. I think the argument's been made, it's been accepted. This was something for the benefit of our community, for the well-being of our citizens, and also the well-being of our firefighters, people who are responding for their safety and well-being. This was something we needed to do. And from that discussions, there was an opportunity to have a bigger grant, to have more firefighters. And that was really uncomfortable, not from that standpoint of, oh, is this a good thing? It's a good thing, but it was so big. It's like, how in the world do we do this? It's like the dog that chased the car and finally caught it. Now what? So I think with the mayor's work and finance and with the work with the firefighters and your staff, you know, coming to that 18 number, I think put us in an area that made it go, okay, we think we can manage. There are areas that we can make this work. There's still, Councilman Borton brings up very good questions. I mean, those are questions that, yeah, they do give us pause and go, what will happen? How are these scenarios? How does this work through? You know, we don't know what property tax, the legislature will do to property tax in the future, or what happens to foregone and all these things that we don't control. But for what the opportunity presents itself with this number of firefighters, what we need to do, it's the right thing to do. And it certainly will be, I'm sure, for finance and all the council that's up here in the next coming years, every budget session, this is going to be the what if scenario. How will we? How will we? And every year it's going to be a year closer. And I think that will get a little less cloudy, but it also comes to a point where council does have to make possibly some tough decisions on, okay, if we want to keep that, then how do we do it and what does that impact? And again, to Councilman's point, there is kind of a moral issue here too about when we hire people and they're on and they're doing what needs to be done. We don't want to hire people to not do what needs not to be done. But yeah, we will have to make that decision down the road if it comes to that. And hopefully it won't. I think that 18 number was the right number. You've committed, we've talked about this, to looking at models and different things. We've got software in place to measure and see what the best way it is for things to happen. So yes, there's always fear and trepidation with something this large, but at the same time, I'm confident that we're taking the right step in the right way, and everyone in this room and beyond is approaching it the right way, recognizing there are factors that we really have to pay attention to, and maybe tough decisions have to be made. Hope not, but it's the right thing to do right now, and I think we can make it happen.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pro.
Of all the decisions that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, this one caused the most stomach aches and sleepless nights. And sometimes I talked with the chief 3 times a day. And can we afford to do it? Can we not afford to do it? Was the question that just really resonated. And I think it depended on the day that you asked me whether I would say yes or no, until I got clear in my head each of the elements of affording to do it or not. And one of the things that it really came down to for me is, as the fire liaison, I've had the opportunity to learn from Chief Bloom and the local about fire response at every level, from personnel to timing to just everything in between, multiple companies, all the different advantages and disadvantages of things. And the thing that really struck me the most was the conversation about our multi-story buildings and our ability to respond to those. And currently, I really do feel like we have one hand tied behind our back. We have approximately 27 buildings right now that cause concern over our ability to respond to those from a staffing standpoint. And that for me was really the thing that had me the most concerned of all of the factors that we discussed. And I know the chief has been available to answer any questions regarding those responses to any of the council members and still is, but that ultimately was the thing for me that caused me to say we can't afford not to do it.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Borton.
Chief, it sounds like you've got support. Clearly, not complicated to read the room here. So can you ensure that this process going forward, there's not a standard we have that will be lowered to try and onboard so many so quick? One of the things that's so precious is how we cultivate, select, and train, and protect those we bring on board. It may be tempting or even required to reduce standards to do big things quick. But I'm telling you, if it means we hire at a lower standard or we don't hire, it means this doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen. You comfortable giving that? Call it a promise, call it whatever you want. We're not doing that, period, hard stop.
Councilman Borton, I'm glad that you brought that up. We have our ops chief here, Jordan Reese, who is also the division chief of training. And I can guarantee you that the Meridian Fire Department has a standard, and it is unshakable. It is not amendable. It is the standard. You either perform to that standard or you do not work here. And I can tell you on a personal note, public safety police and fire specifically, we're the guardians of a very sacred public trust. I take that, and I know my staff takes that very, very solemnly and importantly. And we are the ones as administrators for this agency. We are the gatekeepers to that. No one is entitled to a job with the Meridian Fire Department. They earn it, and it is a standard, and we will not deviate from that. That is a solemn promise.
Council, any additional questions, comments, or motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
if there are no additional questions, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment in the amount of $1,736,714 for the Meridian Fire Department Safer Grant.
Mr. Mayor, second the motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Is there further discussion or any discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Strater,
Aye.
Overton,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Borton.
Aye.
Hoagland.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and the item is agreed to. Okay, thanks, chief and team.
Thank you.
Look forward to working on the hard work now.
It is indeed the hard work begins.
We're holding your feet to the fire.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 14, which is ordinance number 23-2041. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance Prominent Cottages Subdivision H 2022-003113 for rezone of a portion of a parcel of land located in the northeast quarter, the northwest quarter of Section 7, Township 3 North, Range 1 East, Boise, Meridian, City of Meridian, Ada County, Idaho. More particularly described in Exhibit A, rezoning approximately 6.61 acres of land to the R40 High Density Residential Zoning District and approximately 0.535 acres of land to the CG General Retail and Service Commercial Zoning District in the Meridian City Code, directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps as well as the official zoning maps and all applicable official maps depicting the boundaries in the zoning districts of the City of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance. Providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, and the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that'd like it read in its entirety? If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Pearl.
I move that we approve ordinance number 23-2041.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 14, ordinance number 23-2041. Is there a discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Mr. Mayor, Strater,
Aye.
Overton,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Borton, Hoagland.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and the item is agreed to. Council, we've reached the end of our session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland,
I move that we adjourn our work session.
I have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.